There's a sacred hour when the veil between heaven and earth grows thin as tissue paper. That mystical space at 3 a.m. When the world sleeps but souls awaken to receive divine transmissions on frequencies the daylight cannot carry. It was in this holy darkness that Margaret first heard her name being called, not by human voices but by the gentle whisper of eternity itself. At 62, she had convinced herself that God had moved on to younger, more promising servants, like a teacher calling on eager students, while she sat in the back row, forgotten and invisible. Her children were grown and distant. Her husband had passed 2 years prior, and she felt like a forgotten book gathering dust in the corners of life's library, her story unread and her wisdom deemed obsolete by a world obsessed with fresh pages. But on this particular night, as she lay staring at the ceiling of her silent bedroom, drowning in the kind of loneliness that feels like suffocation, something extraordinary happened. She heard it, not with her ears, but with every fiber of her being. Whispers so gentle it felt like divine breath across the strings of her heart. "Margaret, my daughter, your time is now." The words didn't come from outside her room, but from within the cathedral of her soul, where the altar of her purpose had been waiting patiently for this moment of rekindling. It was as if the Holy Spirit had become a master gardener, watering seeds of destiny that had been lying dormant in the soil of her spirit, waiting for their season to bloom. She sat up, heart racing like a hummingbird's wings, looking around the darkened room that had become her monastery of solitude. "Who's there?" She whispered back into the sacred darkness, but the only response was a warmth that began in her chest, like a pilot light being rekindled after long dormancy, and spread through her entire body like liquid gold flowing through spiritual arteries. Accompanying this warmth was a vision that flashed across the screen of her inner sight, herself standing before a room full of grieving widows, their faces being transformed from winter to spring as she shared her story of finding dawn after the longest night. She saw herself as a lighthouse keeper, tending a beacon that would guide other ships safely through the storms of loss. This is how the divine calls to us, my friends. Not always through burning bushes that consume but don't destroy, not through seas that part like curtains, revealing hidden stages of destiny, but through the mystical frequency that operates beyond human understanding. It's the sacred radio waves of the heart that broadcast when the static of the mind finally grows quiet, when we tune our spirits to receive heaven's programming. Think of it like this: the universe becomes a gentle giant, knocking on the door of your soul at 3 a.m., each rap of divine knuckles against your spirit echoing through the chambers of possibility. The knock is persistent but patient, waiting with infinite grace for you to unlock the gates and invite the holy presence inside your life sanctuary. Margaret began to notice the signs everywhere, like breadcrumbs made of starlight scattered along the path of her awakening. The next morning, a cardinal, her deceased husband's favorite bird, perched outside her kitchen window like a crimson messenger from heaven's postal service. This wasn't just any cardinal. This feathered prophet remained stationed at her window for 30 minutes, its song so melodious and persistent it seemed like her husband's spirit had borrowed wings to announce that her season of sorrow was graduating into a season of service. At the grocery store, she bumped into her old neighbor Sarah. Not a coincidence, but a divine appointment orchestrated by destiny's choreographer. Sarah broke down crying like a dam bursting under accumulated grief, confessing she'd been contemplating suicide since her own husband's death. "Margaret," she whispered through tears that fell like rain on drought-stricken ground. "I don't know why I'm telling you this, but something about seeing you today made me feel like maybe there's still hope blooming somewhere in this wasteland of my heart." You see, the divine doesn't speak only in mountaintop moments that make the evening news. More often, God whispers to us in the morning stillness before the world's alarm clocks begin their daily rebellion against peace. Heaven's voice arrives in the sudden knowing that comes when we're washing dishes, our hands busy with earthly things while our spirits become available for heavenly downloads. Your calling doesn't announce itself with the fanfare of earthly coronations. Instead, it arrives like morning mist, gentle, almost imperceptible, yet capable of transforming entire landscapes when we learn to recognize its presence. It comes as a stirring in the depths of your being, like an underground spring beginning to bubble toward the surface after years of hidden preparation. Sometimes your purpose calls through dreams that feel more real than waking hours. Visions so vivid, they seem like previews of coming attractions playing in the theater of your destiny. Other times, it manifests as a thought you can't shake, like a sacred song stuck in your spiritual ears, playing the same melody of possibility until you finally learn to dance to its rhythm. Let me share 3 practices that will tune your heart to this divine frequency, like adjusting an ancient radio until heaven's broadcasting comes through crystal clear. First, create what I call holy silence. Each morning, a sanctuary of stillness before your spirit gets dressed in worldly concerns. These 5 minutes before reaching for your phone are like planting seeds in possibility's garden. Sit quietly, breathe like you're inhaling liquid peace, and ask, God, what symphony are you conducting in my life today? Don't force answers like squeezing water from stone. Become an empty vessel waiting to be filled with divine wine. Second, keep what I call an intuition journal, a sacred ledger recording the supernatural transactions of daily life. When you feel compelled to call someone, when opportunities appear repeatedly like persistent suitors courting your attention, when synchronicities make your soul stir like wind chimes touched by invisible breezes, write them down. You'll begin seeing divine breadcrumbs forming a trail leading toward your destiny like footprints in snow. Third, practice listening prayer, not presenting God with your shopping list of requests, but becoming like Mary at Jesus' feet, silent and receptive. Sometimes the most profound guidance comes not through audible words, but through feelings that wrap around your heart like warm embraces, through images flashing across your inner vision like lightning illuminating dark landscapes, or through sudden clarity that strikes like sunrise after the longest night. Now, let me paint for you a portrait of desperation so raw it will make your heart weep, yet so redeemable it will make your spirit soar. Picture David at 57, standing like a broken statue on a bridge stretching over troubled waters, not just the river below, but the churning currents of his devastated life. He had been an architect, a builder of dreams made manifest in steel and stone. But economic storms had swept through his professional landscape like tornadoes through peaceful towns, leaving nothing but rubble where his successful firm once stood. His marriage, unable to weather financial hurricanes, had collapsed like a house built on shifting sand. His confidence lay in pieces around his feet like shattered glass from windows he'd once seen his future through. This December morning, David stood on that bridge like a man watching his own funeral procession pass below. Tears froze on his cheeks like crystallized grief, his breath forming clouds in winter air. Ghostly evidence of a life that felt more dead than alive. God, he whispered into winter wind that cut through him like a sword of despair. I missed it, didn't I? I missed my train to purpose, my flight to fulfillment, my appointment with the life I was supposed to live. His words fell into frigid air like stones into a deep well, swallowed by silence. But what happened next defies natural law and opens the door to miracles wearing ordinary clothes. As David stood consumed by despair thick as fog, a homeless man materialized beside him, not walking up or approaching, but appearing like an angel in tattered clothing who had been waiting for this exact moment since the foundation of the world. This wasn't just any stranger. This man's eyes held depths like ancient wells filled with wisdom from ages past. He looked directly into David's soul with the penetrating gaze of someone who could see through circumstances, veil into eternal purposes realm. Son, the stranger said, his voice carrying heaven's authority, wrapped in a father's tenderness. The sunrise doesn't consult your RA sume of failures before painting the sky with hope. Your destiny doesn't check your age on cosmic calendars before calling your name into service. The God I serve specializes in resurrections, not just in Easter stories from 2,000 years ago, but in December mornings when hope feels frozen solid in hearts that have forgotten how to believe in spring. Before David could respond, before his logical mind could analyze this divine intersection, the stranger pressed a crumpled paper into David's trembling hands like a communion wafer blessed with supernatural power. Then, as mysteriously as he had appeared, the man vanished into the morning crowd, like mist dissolving at sunrise, leaving David alone with a racing heart and a message that would shatter every limitation he'd accepted as truth. On that paper, written in handwriting that seemed to glow with inner light, were words striking his spirit like lightning. Your greatest masterpiece will be built from your greatest breakdown's blueprint. What feels like your final chapter is actually your divine prologue. The sunrise doesn't care how dark your night was. It rises anyway with hope's stubborn persistence refusing defeat. Your breakthrough doesn't consult past failures like a lawyer reviewing precedents before deciding to manifest. Divine timing operates on a different clock than human expectation. Not mechanical clock timing, but soul timing that moves to eternal purposes, rhythm being fulfilled in their perfect season. Every delay you've experienced has been like a master sculptor's chisel, carefully shaping your character's marble into something beautiful that couldn't exist without each precise strike. Every door slamming shut was divine traffic control, redirecting you from dead-end roads toward destiny's highways. Every dream that seemed to die was actually a seed planted in waiting's winter ground, developing root systems strong enough to support the mighty tree it was meant to become. None of it was wasted, all divine choreography, performed by destiny's master dancers, positioning you through every pirouette of pain and leap of faith for this very moment when everything you've learned, survived, and become converges like rivers flowing into your greatest contributions ocean. I want you to engage in a powerful ritual right now, a liberation ceremony breaking chains you didn't know were binding your spirit. In your heart's courtroom, write a goodbye letter to regret, that prosecutor presenting evidence against your future based on past testimonies. Tell regret you're no longer available for the prison sentence it's been imposing on your dreams. Thank it for trying to protect you like a meaning but misguided security guard, then firmly escort it from possibility's premises. Now, with every conviction ounce your spirit can summon, speak these words aloud until they vibrate through your bones and resonate in your soul. My time is now, appointed by heaven itself. God's timing is perfect timing, orchestrated by infinite wisdom, and I am exactly where I need to be to step into everything I was created for. Imagine your life as a sacred river, not just any waterway, but a mystical current that began flowing when heaven breathed its first wish into your mother's womb. This river carries divinity's DNA in its waters, flowing with supernatural purpose toward a destiny ocean so vast and beautiful your human mind couldn't contain its majesty. This spiritual river doesn't consult your 5-year plans before deciding which direction to flow. It doesn't ask your logical mind's permission before winding around obstacles that look like roadblocks, but are actually divine detours. It doesn't explain why it slows in deep preparation pools, gathering strength like runners crouching at starting lines, building momentum for your journey's next stretch. Elena discovered this truth only after years of trying to be the dam controlling the flow, the engineer insisting on redesigning her existence's riverbed according to her own blueprints. She had been a control-oriented executive, the person who coded calendars, and approached life like a military campaign won through strategic planning and tactical precision. Elena's world was a fortress of schedules and spreadsheets where every minute was accounted for and every outcome predetermined. She lived like a chess master, always thinking 5 moves ahead, until heaven decided to introduce a piece she hadn't seen coming, a move that would checkmate all her careful calculations. Her teenage daughter Emma was diagnosed with a rare neurological condition requiring years of intensive care, transforming their family from a well-oiled machine into what felt like a broken vehicle on life's highway shoulder. Elena's first instinct was raging against this cosmic disruption to her perfectly orchestrated symphony, like a conductor whose orchestra suddenly began playing different music. She fought every specialist suggesting she slow down, battled every friend hinting this challenge might be divine course correction steering her towards something more important than quarterly profits. She was like a swimmer thrashing against current, actually trying to carry her to safety, exhausting herself, struggling against the very force holding her rescue. But then came the night, shattering her control illusion like morning light breaking through stained glass. Elena sat by Emma's hospital bed in the children's wing when she witnessed something stopping her heart and starting her soul. Parents who'd been complete strangers were forming organic community, sharing resources like communion bread, offering hope to newcomers like priests blessing pilgrims entering sacred space. These weren't planned connections orchestrated by hospital social workers. These were divine appointments arranged by destiny's choreographer, supernatural meetings where angels in human form recognized other angels and joined forces for battles only heaven could see coming. Suddenly, Elena heard that familiar whisper, not audible to human ears, but unmistakable to spiritual ones, a voice arising from that hospital room's very walls. Stop fighting the flow like fish swimming upstream to destruction. Trust where I'm taking you like leaves surrendering to wind that knows which trees need their particular shade. In that moment of cosmic clarity, Elena understood the boulder in her river wasn't blocking her path. It was redirecting her like a skilled navigator steering away from rapids that would have destroyed her toward calm waters where her real calling waited like hidden treasure. Here's the mystical truth about God's timing. What appears as delay is often divine orchestration, working behind scenes you cannot see, arranging circumstances with master watchmaker precision, calibrating gears and springs to create perfect timing. That job rejection crushing your spirit was actually protection from career paths leading into meaninglessness deserts. That relationship ending despite desperate prayers was redirection toward love your heart wasn't yet spacious enough to contain. Elena stopped fighting the current like Jacob wrestling the angel and started flowing like Mary surrendering to impossible possibilities. She began organizing support groups for special needs parents, discovering gifts buried within her that she never knew existed, treasures hidden in her compassion's secret chambers, accessible only through her own suffering's key. Right now, engage in sacred visualization, transforming how you see life's challenges. Close your eyes and imagine yourself standing beside your existence's river. In your hands, you carry your biggest worry, greatest future fear, deepest of frustration with how things have unfolded. Feel the weight of trying to control outcomes you were never meant to control, like Atlas carrying a world never meant to rest on human shoulders. Now, with complete trust born from understanding that intelligence far greater than human comprehension directs your life's flow, place that burden into flowing water and watch it disappear around the bend like a prayer carried to heaven's throne room. As you release it, feel the profound peace coming from acknowledging you're not the river's source. You're simply learning to swim in its current. But here's what often happens just as we're learning to trust the flow. Fear shows up like an unwelcome wedding guest, trying to convince us we're not ready, worthy, or capable of handling what God wants to do through us. Picture this with me. You're standing at destiny's edge, but between you and everything you're meant to become stretches a chasm your human mind says is impossible to cross. Your heart pounds with anticipation and terror mix. This is transformation's sacred threshold where fear makes its most desperate stand. This is exactly where Sophia found herself at 43. For years, she'd been receiving the same mystical dream, herself standing before crowds of women, speaking words bringing healing to wounded hearts like balm poured into ancient wounds. The dream was so vivid, so persistent, she'd wake with cheeks wet with tears and spirit burning with purpose like an unextinguishable torch. But every time she considered making the dream real, fear would paint catastrophic pictures in her mind like a malicious artist creating doomed portraits. Who am I to think I could heal anyone? Fear's voice whispered like a serpent in her spiritual garden. I'm broken myself. I struggled with depression, feeling like drowning in darkness oceans. My marriage fell apart like a card house in windstorms. My teenage son barely speaks to me. What wisdom could I possibly offer? Fear showed her all the ways she could fail, all the reasons she wasn't qualified, all evidence she should stay safe and silent, like a candle hiding under a bushel basket. But then came the morning changing everything, the divine appointment, shattering fear's illusions like morning light breaking through doubt's darkness. Sophia was walking through the park, wrestling with these familiar inadequacy demons, when she encountered a scene breaking her heart wide open, like a seed cracking to release the life within. A young woman sat alone on a bench, sobbing with despair Sophia recognized from her own darkest seasons. The raw, gut-wrenching anguish of a soul lost in suffering's wilderness. Without thinking, planning, or consulting her fear, Sophia approached her like a moth drawn to a flame needing tending. "I don't know what you're facing," Sophia said gently, her voice carrying tenderness of someone who'd walked through her own shadow valley. "But I want you to know I see your pain, and it matters. You matter." What happened next was pure divine intervention, a moment when heaven reached down and touched earth with healing fingers. The young woman looked up with eyes that had been drowning in darkness, but suddenly caught light's reflection and said, words echoing in Sophia's soul forever, "I've been sitting here praying for God to send me a sign that life is worth living. Are you my answer?" In that moment, Sophia understood with blazing clarity that her struggles hadn't disqualified her from God's use. They had qualified her with credentials no seminary could provide. Her wounds weren't weakness, they were wisdom earned in suffering's university. Her scars weren't shame, they were strength marks, like trees growing more beautiful where they'd been broken. Fear had been lying like a prosecuting attorney presenting false evidence, convincing her that imperfections made her inadequate, when truth was her authenticity, was exactly what broken hearts needed to hear. Her brokenness wasn't disqualification. It was divine qualification, the very thing making her words ring true in others' ears who'd walked through similar fires. Fear is not a concrete wall. It's fog looking impenetrable from distance, but dissolving like morning mist when you step forward with courage. Fear cannot stop you unless you give it your destiny's keys. Fear is not your jailer, it's your invitation to faith, your opportunity to discover that courage isn't fear's absence, but faith's presence stronger than fear's lies. The most paralyzing fear many face is not being enough, not smart enough, qualified enough, healed enough, young enough, spiritual enough. But here's the mystical truth setting you free. God doesn't call the equipped, God equips the called. Your inadequacies aren't destiny obstacles. They're the very qualities making you relatable, approachable, and authentic in your calling. Moses stuttered like a broken record, yet God chose him to speak liberation words to Pharaoh. David was a shepherd boy smelling of sheep, yet God anointed him king over Israel. Mary was a teenage girl from an unheard of small town, yet God chose her to carry the world's Savior. Your limitations aren't disqualifications. They're divine miracle appointments manifesting through your willingness despite weaknesses. Right now, speak these words aloud, letting them vibrate through every cell like tuning forks, aligning your entire essence with divine truth. I am guided by infinite wisdom, seeing what I cannot see. I am protected by divine love surrounding me like an impenetrable fortress. I am rising into authentic power waiting within me like seed in dark soil. Fear has no authority over my destiny because my destiny belongs to God. In divine timing's mystical mathematics, nothing is random. Every encounter, setback, an unexpected path turn is a carefully placed clue in the cosmic treasure hunt leading to your purpose. The challenge isn't that breadcrumbs aren't there. We've forgotten how to see with spiritual eyes, how to read sacred signs written in synchronicity's language. Let me share Marcus's extraordinary story, a man who almost missed his destiny because he was too busy being angry about detours to notice where they led, like a GPS that recalculates when you miss your turn. Marcus had been a high school history teacher for 15 years when budget cuts eliminated his position, like a surgeon removing what seemed essential, but was actually redirecting him toward his real calling. At 42, with two teenagers whose college dreams hung in balance and a mortgage uncaring about employment status, he found himself scanning job listings with growing desperation, like a man searching for water in rejection's desert. But here's where the story becomes mystical, where ordinary realm intersects supernatural. Every job interview Marcus attended derailed in the same peculiar way, like trains switched to different tracks by an invisible conductor. Inevitably, conversation shifted from his teaching qualifications to stories about his father, a World War II veteran carrying wounds deeper than flesh. Soul scars from battles continuing long after war ended. Marcus would find himself passionately describing how his father's untreated trauma affected their entire family, like ripples from stones thrown into still waters. How he'd learned helping his father process memories and emotions that era's medical system couldn't address because they lacked names for invisible wounds. After the third interview ended this way, Marcus began wondering if these weren't coincidences, but clues written in a language he was only beginning to understand. That same week, like punctuation marks in divine timing's sentence, he received a wrong number call from a woman desperately seeking counseling for her veteran husband drowning in combat trauma. Before Marcus could correct her mistake, before a logical mind could redirect conversation, he found himself offering insights flowing from somewhere beyond conscious knowledge, wisdom feeling downloaded from heaven's healing database directly into his heart. The woman began weeping, not from sorrow but relief, like someone wandering in darkness suddenly catching lighthouse sight. "Sir," she whispered through tears, "I don't know who you are, but God used you to give me exactly what I needed. My husband's been talking about ending his life, but what you shared, I think it might save him." The next morning, while walking his dog in what he thought was routine neighborhood stroll, Marcus encountered elderly neighbor Bob, a Vietnam veteran who rarely spoke to anyone, living like a hermit behind his own trauma walls. But this day, something had shifted in spiritual atmosphere. Bob approached with tears in his eyes like morning dew reflecting hope's first rays. "Marcus," he said, voice breaking like a dam releasing years of held back pain, "I heard through the grapevine about your dad and his war struggles. I've been carrying heavy Vietnam memories feeling like chest stones. And I wonder, could we talk sometime?" Within a month, Marcus was meeting regularly with 5 local veterans, sharing tools and techniques learned from helping his father navigate trauma's minefield. These weren't formal counseling sessions, but sacred circles where wounded warriors could finally lay down invisible armor and tend wounds festering in silence. The job rejections that terrified him weren't closed doors. They were divine redirections, like traffic signals preventing him from entering intersections that would have collided with his destiny. The wrong phone call wasn't a mistake. It was mystical appointment arranged by heaven's scheduling department. The chance neighbor encounter wasn't coincidence. It was cosmic orchestration conducted by divine purposes symphony directors. This is how universe speaks when we learn listening with spiritual ears, through patterns becoming visible only when we step back and look at our lives like astronomers studying constellations, seeing how individual stars connect, forming meaning pictures. That book, appearing everywhere, isn't stalking you. It's courting you with persistent love. Those repeated conversations about the same topic with different people aren't boring coincidences. They're divine emphasis, like God using highlighters to mark important passages in your callings book. Dreams visiting you nightly with the same symbolic message aren't your subconscious being repetitive. They're heaven's way of sending registered mail to your soul, requiring acknowledgement signature. Sudden appearance of specific animals, numbers, or songs following you everywhere aren't random occurrences. They're breadcrumbs made of meaning, scattered by divine hands, guiding you home to purpose. Your soul has been leaving clues, like loving parent hiding Easter eggs, but your logical mind has dismissed them as meaningless coincidences, like sophisticated child walking past treasures hidden in plain sight. What if instead of analyzing these occurrences to death, you began honoring them as sacred guidance from a loving universe wanting your success? Begin practicing what I call divine detective work, becoming a spiritual sloth, noticing heaven's constantly dropped clues. Each evening before sleep, ask, what tried getting my attention today? What patterns am I noticing? What opportunities appeared that I might have dismissed too quickly? Write everything down, even if it seems insignificant. During morning quiet time, pose this powerful question to silence. What is trying to emerge through me today? Then listen, not just with ears, but entire being. Answers might come through radio songs making you weep, conversations igniting passion, or simply peaceful knowing settling in your heart like morning mist revealing landscapes you didn't know existed. Pay attention to what makes your spirit stir. Notice when you feel suddenly energized by certain topics, when time stops because you're so engaged. These aren't just preferences. They're calling clues. It's breadcrumbs leading toward purpose's feast. Watch for divine appointments disguised as interruptions. That person, randomly, calling when you're discouraged might carry heaven's message. The stranger behind you starting conversation sparking life, changing ideas might be messenger unaware they're delivering divine mail. The delay causing you to be exactly where needed at exactly right moment might be heaven, ensuring you don't miss destiny appointments. Trust synchronicity's mystical timing. When same opportunity appears 3 times in 1 week through different sources, pay attention. When you keep running into people needing exactly what you offer, take notice. When circumstances align seeming too perfect to be coincidental, consider they probably are. Consider you're witnessing divine love's choreography, arranging your destiny's dance. The moment arrives in every soul's journey when whispers become roars, when gentle nudges become undeniable summons, when you can no longer pretend you don't hear your name being called from destiny's depths. This is the sacred moment when you must choose, will you step into the light you were created to be, or continue hiding in what feels safe shadows? Let me tell you about Grace. A woman discovering her most painful chapter was actually prologue to her most powerful purpose. Grace had endured what no mother should face, losing her 16-year-old daughter Emma to suicide. For 2 years after Emma's death, Grace existed in grief fog, so thick she could barely function. Friends urged her to move on. Therapists suggested closure, but Grace knew some wounds don't heal, they transform us. Then came the dream changing everything. Grace dreamed of Emma, radiant and whole, standing in what looked like a garden filled with other young people. Emma looked directly at her mother saying, "Mom, the tears you've cried are going to become water helping other families bloom. Your broken heart is going to become a healing heart. My death wasn't meaningless if it leads to you saving other daughters like me." Grace woke from that dream with clarity, feeling like divine fire in her bones. She understood with mystical certainty that her grief wasn't just personal. It was purposeful. Emma's struggle with depression and tragic choice had given Grace insight into teenage minds that could literally save lives. But here's where story becomes truly miraculous. Grace didn't just start a support group. She began having supernatural encounters with families on tragedy's brink. A mother would call her, guided by inexplicable urge, hours before her son planned taking his own life. A father would bump into her at grocery store and find himself sharing his daughter's struggles for the first time with another human being. A teenager would approach her after presentations whispering, "I was going to end it tonight, but something you said made me want to try one more day." Grace's transformation from grieving mother to life-saving advocate demonstrates the profound truth that your greatest wound can become your greatest gift to the world. The tears you've cried in secret are becoming water, helping others bloom. The darkness you've walked through is qualifying you to be lighthouse for those still lost at sea. The mountains you've climbed give perspective to guide others up their own impossible peaks. This is divine purpose's mystical design. Our individual rising becomes rising of everyone we touch. Your healing becomes their possibility. Your breakthrough becomes their permission slip. Your courage to rise becomes their inspiration to believe they too can overcome. The moment Grace answered her calling, she discovered something transforming her understanding of loss forever. She wasn't just helping other families. She was honoring Emma's memory in the most profound way possible. Every life saved through her work became testament to her daughter's significance. Emma's brief life was creating healing ripple effects extending for generations. Right now, consider this life-altering question. What if my rise is the very miracle someone else has been praying for? There's someone in your influence sphere who desperately needs seeing transformation is possible. Healing can emerge from heartbreak. God hasn't forgotten them in their darkest hour. Your willingness to answer your calling isn't just about changing your life. It's about changing every life trajectory you'll touch along the way. The story you think is just personal struggle is actually testimony someone else needs hearing. The gift you think is too small to matter is exactly what someone else needs to experience hope again. Start taking concrete steps today. If you feel called to mentor someone, reach out this week. If you've been delaying that project, your heart keeps returning to take one small action tomorrow. If you have overcoming testimony, begin sharing it with those needing to know victory is possible. Volunteer somewhere aligning with your soul's passion. Join causes making your spirit alive. Write that book your dreams keep showing. Start that ministry your prayers keep revealing. Create that program your intuition keeps insisting the world needs. Remember, you don't have to be perfect to be used powerfully. You don't need all answers to help someone find their way. You just need willingness to share what you've learned, offer what you've received, become living example that God's love never gives up on anyone. Grace now travels internationally, sharing her hope and healing message. Her organization has directly prevented hundreds of teen suicides and trained thousands of parents recognizing warning signs. But she tells me the moment she knew she'd truly answered, her calling was receiving a letter from a young woman writing, "Because you shared your story, I chose to live. Because Emma's life mattered to you, my life now matters to me. Your pain has prepared you to be someone's hope. Your struggle has qualified you to be someone's strength. Your rising story is the miracle someone else has been desperately praying to witness." As we close our time together, I want you to feel the truth that's been trying to reach you through every word we've shared. Your time is now. Your season of rising has arrived. The delays, struggles, seasons of waiting, they weren't wasted time. They were sacred preparation for this moment when you stop playing small and start stepping into who you were created to be's fullness. God is calling your name. Can you hear it? It's in morning breeze whispers, in gentle stirrings of your heart when considering what's possible, in dreams that won't let you rest, in opportunities appearing despite doubts. You are not too old, too damaged, too late, or too anything to be used magnificently. You are exactly the person God needs for the assignment He's prepared for you. The world needs your light, wisdom, story, love. Your time is now. Your rise has begun. And nothing, absolutely nothing, can stop what God has ordained for your life. The waiting is over. Your moment has arrived. Go now and rise.